In this video, I'm going to show you 10 very common mistakes that most chess players make. Maybe even you will make these mistakes. If you want to test yourself, you can try to find a solution to every single exercise and count up your points, and at the end you will have a score on 10 that you can let me know in the comments. Let's get started. So this is our first position, and in this position it is white to move. So your goal is to try and find the best move for white. And at the same time, you should also avoid a very common mistake. So for all of these, I recommend that you pause the video and that you try to find the solution. I will reveal to you the answer if you decided to play the move queen takes c6 or queen to c7, you can give yourself 1 point. Every other move either loses the advantage for white or completely ends up losing the game. And the very common mistake that we had to avoid here was playing rook takes a6. This looks at first sight like we have some tactics, because of course if black doesn't watch out and they capture here, we can take this, and this is of course a very simple back rank checkmate. But black doesn't have to recapture, and you can't count on your opponent playing the moves that you want them to play. You have to calculate multiple options, especially their checks and their captures. And there is a nice trick black can try here, and that is to do an x-ray attack with queen takes a5. And this queen is actually backed up by the rook. So if we take, this rook is gonna take, we have to block with the bishop, then we lose our queen, we can take back with the pawn, and maybe something like c5. And this pawn is not gonna promote, of course, because this rook will always be in time to stop it, and this endgame will always be winning for black. This is our next position. It is white to move, and we are in check by the enemy queen. So we basically only have two options. We can go to f1 or we can go to h1. We have to go to one of those squares. Those are the only legal moves. So you should try to think about this for a moment and see what move you would play. So if your answer is to play king to h1, then you get a point for this exercise, and then you will now have a score on 2 points. The thing with this move is, yes, we are going to allow a draw because we are going to get checked by the queen, we get to move back, and then basically everything is going to repeat. The big mistake that a lot of players would make here is to play their king to f1, because maybe they don't want to go for that draw line, so they want to go here with the king to f1. But now instead of a draw, all of a sudden we are just going to lose the game, simply because of this sequence with queen to h3 check, forcing us to move back, knight f3 check, forcing us into the corner, and then a checkmate. This is our next position, a king and pawn endgame, and this is where of course a lot of players make mistakes. It is white to move in this position, and there is only one move that keeps the draw, so you have to try and find that move to keep the draw. Okay, so in this position, the right move that will give you 1 point is to play king to f1. And we have to do this. It's the only way. I'm going to show you why. In this position, what's most likely going to happen is we are going to lock up these pawns. Black will have to move the king somewhere. It doesn't really matter. And black has to even be careful, because if they ever get closer to this second rank, white is actually going to win this. This would be a big mistake, because we could push the pawn, and then in the end we will be promoting. So yeah, black would have to go here, and then we can basically get closer with the king, and black has to repeat moves and go for something like this, and just keep repeating basically between those two squares. A very common mistake in this position would be to try something like king to h2, thinking that okay, we are gonna maneuver and then we will go here. But this is not gonna work because of king to d2, an incredible move, but of course black needs to find this, because if black plays anything else, for example if they go here, they are actually going to lose in this position, because yeah, they have to move away and then they lose the pawn. But if black finds this move king to d2, they now gain some form of opposition, and basically we are in zugzwang, meaning that whatever we try to play, we're always going to lose, because if we just go here with the king, black moves here as well, and this is a very famous position known as the trebuchet, which I cover in my endgame video. And yeah, there's not much we can do. In the end, we will be forced to move away. Black will capture this pawn, and black will promote before we ever have the opportunity to promote one of those pawns. This is our next position. We are in check again, and we have to find something that we can do. We basically only have 3 legal moves. We can move the king to h3, we can block with the bishop, or we can block with the queen. So you have to pick between those moves. And before we go any further, I just wanted to say that if you are somebody who wants to improve at chess, you should definitely consider joining my Discord group, where we have a bunch of free things. We have free chess training plans, we have tournaments, we have group lessons, we have video lessons on how to build an opening repertoire. So you should definitely join my Discord server. So there are basically 2 solutions here, 2 solutions that both keep the draw for white, and that is to either play king to h3 or bishop to g2. So those are the only moves that you can play that keep a draw. If you played queen to g2, you will be losing. You will be losing because of a tactic that many players don't know. So first of all, black will exchange the queens, and now black will play a brilliant move, bishop to a4. And this is something that players sometimes have never seen before. But if black is pretty close to promotion and they have a bishop, sometimes they can do this. They can put the bishop here. Basically, they will just crash the bishop, eliminate this pawn, and then promote this one. Of course, if you take this, you are in trouble because black is going to promote in the end. If you don't take this, let's say we just try to do something with the bishop, black will just keep grabbing pawns. If you ever take the bishop, they are promoting, and if you don't take the bishop, in the end, they're also going to be able to promote one of those pawns. So that is why queen to g2, even though it looks normal, is a mistake in this position. Position number 5, it is white to move. And we have to try and find a move that doesn't lose the game here for white. So I will give you some time to calculate, you can pause the video, and now I will reveal the answer. So there are 2 solutions here that give you a point. If you play king to e3, you get a point, and if you play king to e2, you also get a point. So those look very normal. Almost every other move, actually every other move, is gonna lose. A very common mistake here would be to play pawn to d4, and this actually loses because of rook to a1. You might be thinking, why are they doing this? They are giving away the pawn, but in the end they will give you a check, and they will also win your rook. And if you don't take this, let's say we play anything else, of course they are going to be promoting, and black also wins this. There are also other mistakes you could make, for example moving the rook here as well, because you are just going to run into the same tactic. Let's say this is also a blunder just because of the same idea. You can move the rook here, if you take, we promote, if you take this, we win your rook. So that is why moving the king to those 2 squares were the only options that we had to keep a draw. This is position number 6, and here we are attacking as white. As you can see, we have our knight very close by, taking away some squares. This knight is also attacking, this queen is also attacking this pawn. We could maybe push h5 as well. So you can see a lot of things are going on here, but we also have to be careful that we don't make a mistake. So it's time for you to calculate and see what move you would play in this position. So there are actually a bunch of answers here that you could potentially play. If you wanted to continue the attack, your best option would have been to play pawn to h5. Yes, you are giving away your knight, but we get into this sequence where we trade pawns, we give a check on this diagonal, basically forcing black to block with something. Then we can take here, and after a bunch of exchanges, in the end, we would get a position like this, for example. So h5 is the best option and gives you a point if you play this, because we are continuing the attack. 2 other moves that also work here are to play rook to e1 here or rook to e1 here. Just pretty simple moves, guarding or knight. I mean, both of those moves are also fine. One more thing that I didn't mention, but also knight to a5 works, but this gives away your advantage for the most part. So this move doesn't give you a point, but it also doesn't lose the game. So you got a point for h5 or moving one of the rooks over. A very common mistake here would be to play queen to f7, thinking that we have some kind of plan, because of course, if black takes this, we now have a beautiful checkmate with the 2 knights working together. But you can never count that black is going to go along with your plan. You always have to check every single option. And here black has a nice solution, and that is to play check with the bishop. We have to move the king, and now they can actually take this queen, because this is no longer a checkmate. The king can just move here. this is our next position, and it is a pretty complicated one as well. We are black and our queen is under attack. As you can see, our queen is being attacked by this knight. So we have to do something. We have to move the queen. And there is actually one variation here in which we can win material. So we have to choose, are we going to move the queen, or maybe there is something else as well that we can do instead of moving the queen. So you should try to do some calculation. So a very common mistake that many players would make here is to think about playing a counter attack. And that is, for example, to play this, knight e4. But knight e4 loses. Knight e4 loses even though it looks so natural, because again, you are probably thinking, white is going to capture here, you can capture this, maybe we go for that line. This is actually quite good for black. But your opponent never has to go along with your plans. And here you might have missed that there is actually an Anastasia checkmate pattern that white could play, which is not very well known. And that is check with the knight, forcing the king on this file, on the h file, and then sacrifice the rook. Check with the rook, and here we have checkmate with the queen. So this is an entire checkmate sequence that is basically unstoppable the moment that we move away this knight, because the knight was also an important defender here on this king side. So what is the right solution? The right solution is to move the queen. If you move the queen to d7, that makes sense, but the position is pretty equal. If you move the queen to b2, you get an extra point for this exercise. Queen to d7, although it's a good move, doesn't give you a point because basically it's just a drawish position. But queen to b2 gives you a point because, of course, the king has to take, and now we can do this trick. Now we can play knight e4 with a check. King has to go somewhere, and then you can take the queen. They take this, and this position is very good for black. So this is the variation that would have given you a point. This is our next position, another king and pawn endgame, where I think most of you would make some mistakes. There are a bunch of moves that are mistakes here, and actually only one move that wins the game for black. So you should pause this, see if you can find it. So the way to win this for black is to play pawn to c5. Pawn to c5 is basically the only way to win. Let's say they take, we take this, and at the end of the day, we're always going to be promoting first. Even if they don't take, of course, we are just going to grab this pawn and we're going to promote as well. There are a bunch of mistakes. Pretty much every other move that you could think about was a mistake. I think the most common mistake would probably be king f7, which looks decent because, yeah, we're guarding our pawn that's under attack. But let's just play this endgame out. Let's say they play here b4, we are going to play something. Let's say this, b6, h4. We still have to try and make moves, right? We are playing moves, and we're just going to end up in a position at the very end where at some point we are going to get this, and this is known as zugzwang. We are forced to make a move, and wherever we go, we're always going to end up in a losing position. So if we don't watch out, we end up in zugzwang, which is a very common endgame mistake. If you thought about playing something like a5 or a pawn move, you also lose, just simply because white is going to capture this and they are going to promote. This is exercise number 9. Make sure that you don't make a mistake here. It is black to move, and we are in somewhat of a complicated position. Our queen is over here on a1, and our queen is under attack by two pieces, the bishop and the rook. So yeah, we have to do something. Do we grab this pawn or the bishop maybe? Do we sacrifice for the rook, or do we do something else entirely? This is a bit of a complicated one, so you might want to calculate, but I will show you the solution right now. So the big mistake here would be to think about grabbing this and thinking that, yeah, my queen is safe. But of course you are going to fall for a pretty simple discovered attack. This queen is attacking us, and this bishop can give us a check, and that's a very common pattern. We are just losing the game, check and checkmate. So this just leads to a checkmate in 3 moves. Yeah, if you take the bishop, you are just losing your queen for a bishop. You will lose the game. If you take the rook, it makes the most sense. If you want to try and fight for a draw, maybe this is the best option that you have, but it's still not the best move, so this is not worth a point. The best thing here is to launch a counter attack. Oops, not this. To launch a counter attack with rook a to d8, and this is the only move that keeps the game equal. We do this, we attack the queen. So yeah, if they take our queen, we just take their queen, and black is even winning in this line. So white basically has to move the queen. And now we have to find a very difficult to play move, and that is to play queen takes f1 right now. We sacrifice the queen, and then you can play something like f6. And the thing is, this knight is actually trapped. So we will be able to win this knight, and then we will have bishop versus bishop and two rooks versus the queen. For example, if I just fast forward a couple of moves, something like this, and in the end this knight will always be captured, or even if they try everything that they can to hold on, in the end it's still not gonna work, of course, because the queen will be exchanged first, and then we get an endgame, and this endgame would even be winning. This is our final position, also your final opportunity to score a point. It is black to move, and we have a couple of problems. First of all, our queen is under attack. Second, you can already see a bunch of things are happening on the king side as well. So what do we do? Do we have to stop something on the king side, or do we move our queen? We have to make sure we don't get checkmated as well. So I will give you some time so you can pause the video, and now I will show you this solution. So the best move here, which makes the most sense and gives you a point, is to play queen to a5, because it's pretty simple. We save the queen and we also add some protection to the bishop. Queen a4 also works, although I think it's a bit strange, because after this exchange you now have to find the only move that wins the game for black, queen a5, and then taking this with the queen. So yeah, queen a4 is a bit strange, but it also works because we still have this check. The very common mistake here would be to be greedy and to just try to grab more material and play queen takes b2, because now all of a sudden we get this bishop trade. Doesn't really matter how we recapture black. White is just going to destroy our position. They can even here temporarily sack the material, go in with checks, win more material, and yeah, this is not looking good. We are going to be checkmated in every single line, or at least we will have to maybe go back with the queen, and yeah, we are still going to be losing a bunch of material as well. So that's it. Definitely let me know in the comments what your score was. How many points on 10 do you have? If you enjoyed this, subscribe, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.